The iron collar bit into Sarah's neck like the teeth of some metallic beast. 3 years she had worn it, 3 years since the raiders had torn her from her family's wagon on the Oregon Trail. The weight of the metal had become part of her, a constant reminder that she was property now, not a person. Her hands, once soft and meant for piano keys and embroidery, were cracked and bleeding from the endless work in the trading post. Marcus Thornton owned her, just as he owned the ramshackle collection of buildings that served as the last outpost before the vast wilderness. He was a cruel man, made crueler by whiskey and the isolation of the frontier. The collar was his invention, his way of marking her as his possession. Other captives had come and gone, but Sarah remained because she had nowhere to go. Her family was dead, scattered across the prairie in a trail of blood and broken dreams. The morning started like any other. Sarah hauled water from the creek, her bare feet numb in the frigid current. October had painted the cottonwoods gold, but she barely noticed beauty anymore. Survival occupied every thought, every breath. She had learned to make herself invisible, to move like a shadow through Thornton's world, avoiding his attention whenever possible. But today would be different. Today, everything would change. Thornton was drinking again. She could hear him inside the main building, his voice rising and falling in angry conversation with the trappers who had arrived the night before. They were rough men, even by frontier standards, and the way they looked at her made her skin crawl. She knew that look. She had seen it before, right before Thornton decided to remind her who held her leash. The creek whispered its eternal song as Sarah knelt beside it, filling the wooden buckets. The water was so clear she could see every stone on the bottom, every flash of silver as minnows darted between the rocks. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember Virginia, her mother's garden, the sound of her sister's laughter. The memories were like pressing on a bruise, painful but somehow necessary. A shadow fell across the water. Sarah looked up to find one of the trappers standing over her, his grin revealing teeth stained brown from tobacco. He said something crude, reaching for her arm. Sarah jerked back, stumbling into the creek. The cold water soaked her thin dress, and she scrambled to her feet, desperate to get away. The man laughed, following her into the water. The gunshot cracked across the morning like thunder. The trapper's hat flew off his head, and he froze, hands raised. Sarah turned to see Thornton standing on the bank, rifle in hand, his face purple with rage. But he wasn't defending her. He was protecting his property. The distinction was everything. "She's worth money, you fool," Thornton snarled. "Touch her again and I'll shoot more than your hat." The trapper backed away, cursing under his breath. Sarah climbed out of the creek, shivering, her wet dress clinging to her thin frame. Thornton grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh hard enough to bruise. He dragged her back toward the buildings, and she knew what was coming. He would lock her in the root cellar, her punishment for attracting attention, for existing, for breathing. The cellar was dark and rank with the smell of earth and rotting vegetables. Thornton shoved her inside and slammed the door. She heard the heavy bar drop into place, sealing her in the darkness. Sarah sank to the dirt floor, wrapping her arms around herself, trying to stop the shivering. The wet dress was already beginning to freeze in the cold air. Hours passed. The darkness was absolute, pressing against her eyes like a physical weight. She dozed fitfully, dreaming of her mother's face, her father's voice reading from the Bible by firelight. When she woke, she heard something above her. Footsteps, lighter than Thornton's heavy tread. Voices speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Then shouting. Gunfire. Screaming. The trading post was under attack. The sounds of battle filtered through the cellar door like echoes from another world. Sarah pressed herself against the far wall, her heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. More gunshots rang out, punctuated by war cries that made her blood run cold. She had heard stories around the trading post, terrifying tales of raids and massacres, of settlers found scalped and mutilated. Now those stories were becoming her reality. The chaos above seemed to last forever, though it could only have been minutes. Men shouted in English and in languages she couldn't identify. Something heavy crashed to the ground, shaking dust from the cellar ceiling. Then, as suddenly as it began, the shooting stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise had been. Sarah held her breath, listening. Footsteps crossed the floor above her head. Someone was searching the buildings. She heard furniture being overturned, goods being ransacked. Her mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. If Thornton was dead, she would starve down here, trapped until thirst or cold claimed her. If he had survived and driven off the attackers, his rage would be terrible. And if the raiders found her, well, she had heard enough stories to know that fate might be worst of all. The footsteps stopped directly above the cellar door. Sarah's breath came in shallow gasps as she heard the bar being lifted. Light flooded in as the door swung open, blinding her after hours in complete darkness. She threw up her arm to shield her eyes, squinting against the brightness. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, tall and still. "Please," she whispered in English, her voice cracking from disuse. "Please don't hurt me." The figure descended the stairs slowly. As Sarah's eyes adjusted, she made out the details. A man, tall and powerfully built, dressed in buckskin decorated with intricate beadwork. His long black hair was tied back with strips of leather, and 2 eagle feathers hung from the binding. His face was stern, carved from bronze, with dark eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He carried a rifle in one hand, but it was pointed at the ground, not at her. He spoke, his voice deep and measured, in a language she didn't understand. When she didn't respond, he switched to heavily accented English. "You are prisoner here." Sarah nodded, her hand instinctively going to the iron collar around her neck. The man's eyes followed the movement, and something flickered across his face. Anger, perhaps, or disgust. He climbed back up the stairs and called out. Another man appeared, younger, carrying a heavy hammer and chisel from Thornton's workshop. The older man gestured for Sarah to stand and come closer. She hesitated, fear warring with desperate hope. Slowly, she climbed the stairs on trembling legs. When she emerged into the trading post, she gasped. Bodies lay scattered across the floor. Thornton was among them, his eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling, a dark stain spreading across his chest. The trappers who had arrived the night before were dead as well. Only the raiders remained, perhaps a dozen men, gathering supplies and weapons. The older man guided Sarah to a chair and indicated she should sit. The younger man approached with the tools, and Sarah's heart began to race again. But instead of threatening her, he positioned the chisel against the lock of her collar. The older man spoke sharply, and the others in the room fell silent, watching. With 3 powerful blows of the hammer, the lock shattered. The collar fell away, clattering to the floor. Sarah raised her hands to her neck, touching the raw, scarred skin. Tears streamed down her face before she could stop them. The older man said something to the others, then turned back to her. "You have family? Place to go?" Sarah shook her head. "They're dead. All of them. I have nowhere." The man considered this, his dark eyes studying her face. "I am Dakota, war leader of the Lakota. This place, this man," he gestured at Thornton's body, "they sell weapons to our enemies, to those who make war on our people. We come to stop this. Now we return to our village." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "You can stay here, or you can come. The choice is yours." Sarah looked around the trading post. It was the site of her imprisonment, her torture, her degradation. She had no food, no horse, no way to survive alone on the frontier. Winter was coming, and she would die here among the corpses if she stayed. But going with the Lakota meant stepping into the unknown, into a world she had been taught to fear. She thought of the collar, of Thornton's cruelty, of 3 years in chains. Then she looked at Dakota, at the way he had ordered her freed, at the respect with which his warriors treated him. She thought about choice, real choice, for the first time in so long. "I'll come with you," she said. The Lakota moved like ghosts through the wilderness, silent and swift despite the horses laden with goods taken from the trading post. Sarah rode behind one of the younger warriors on a sturdy pinto mare, her thin arms wrapped around his waist to keep from falling. She had never been comfortable on horseback, and 3 years of captivity had left her weak and unsteady. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest as the horse climbed hills and forded streams, following trails invisible to her eyes. Dakota led from the front, his bearing commanding even from a distance. The warriors treated him with a deference that spoke of earned respect rather than fear. Throughout the first day, Sarah caught them glancing back at her with curiosity and something else she couldn't quite identify. Suspicion, perhaps, or concern. She was a complication, an unknown element in their world. They stopped only twice during the daylight hours, both times to water the horses. No one spoke to Sarah directly except for the young warrior whose horse she shared. His name was Chaitan, and his English was broken but earnest. He offered her dried meat and water, showing her how to eat the pemmican that sustained the warriors on long journeys. The food was strange, mixing buffalo meat with berries and fat, but Sarah was too hungry to care. She ate greedily, ignoring the way it sat heavy in her shrunken stomach. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the party made camp in a grove of cottonwoods beside a stream. The warriors moved with practiced efficiency, some tending the horses while others built fires and prepared food. Sarah stood awkwardly to one side, unsure where she fit into this choreographed routine. Dakota noticed her uncertainty and approached, carrying a buffalo robe. "Cold tonight," he said simply, handing her the robe. "You sit by fire, eat. Tomorrow we reach village." Sarah wrapped the robe around her shoulders, grateful for its warmth. The October night air had teeth, and her threadbare dress offered little protection. She moved closer to the fire, feeling its heat on her face, watching the flames dance and spark. The warriors talked among themselves in their own language, occasionally laughing at some shared joke. The sounds were so different from the harsh voices and cruel laughter she had lived with at the trading post. Chaitan brought her a bowl of stew, rich with meat and wild onions. As she ate, an older warrior approached and sat across the fire from her. His face was weathered like old leather, marked with scars that told stories of battles long past. He studied her for a long moment before speaking in surprisingly clear English. "I am Ohanzi," he said. "I learned your language from missionaries many winters ago, before they leave our lands." He paused, feeding a stick into the fire. "Dakota, he is good man, but you must understand. Our people have much reason to distrust whites. Soldiers burn our villages. Settlers take our hunting grounds. Men like the one you called master sell guns to our enemies. Some in the village will not welcome you." Sarah set down her bowl, her appetite suddenly gone. "Then why did Dakota bring me?" Ohanzi smiled, a sad expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Because he is good man. He see you in chains, he see cruelty, and he cannot leave you to die. But good heart does not make simple path." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "You must prove yourself worthy of his mercy. You must show you are not enemy. Some will test you. Some will hope you fail. This is truth I tell you now, so you are prepared." The night grew darker, and one by one the warriors rolled themselves in their robes and slept. Sarah lay awake under the stars, listening to the sounds of the wilderness around her. Wolves howled in the distance, and somewhere an owl called out its hunting cry. She thought about Ohanzi's words, about the challenges that awaited her. Fear gnawed at her insides, but beneath it ran a thread of something else. Determination, perhaps. Stubbornness. She had survived Thornton. She would survive this too. Morning came cold and gray, with frost coating the grass and their breath visible in the air. The warriors broke camp quickly, and soon they were moving again. As the sun climbed higher, the landscape changed. Rolling plains gave way to hills covered in pine and cedar. They followed a river that cut through rock faces, its water the color of turquoise where it caught the light. In the afternoon, they crested a rise, and Dakota raised his hand, bringing the party to a halt. Below them, nestled in a valley beside the river, was the Lakota village. Sarah counted at least 50 teepees arranged in careful order, their painted sides bright against the autumn landscape. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and she could see people moving about their daily tasks. Children played near the water while women worked on hides stretched across frames. Dogs barked and ran between the lodges. Dakota turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "This is home," he said. "Our people. Our way." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a warning. "Chief Mapia leads us. He is wise but wary. You must show respect, show strength. Show you are worth the trouble you bring." Sarah straightened her spine, pushing down the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. She had worn chains and survived. She would face whatever came next with her head held high. As they descended toward the village, she saw faces turning toward them, saw the surprise and then the hostility as people recognized what she was. A white woman. The enemy. But she was also something else now. She was free. And she would fight to stay that way. The village surrounded Sarah like a living thing, full of sounds and smells and stares that made her skin prickle with awareness. As Dakota's party rode between the teepees, people emerged to greet the returning warriors with calls and embraces. But when their eyes found Sarah, the warmth vanished, replaced by expressions ranging from curiosity to open anger. Mothers pulled their children close. Old men shook their heads and muttered. Young warriors fingered their weapons and glared. Dakota dismounted and spoke rapidly to a group of elders who had gathered. Sarah couldn't understand the words, but she recognized argument when she heard it. Voices rose and fell, some heated, others measured and calm. She remained on the horse, acutely aware of her vulnerability, of how exposed she was in her ragged dress with her scarred neck visible to all. Finally, Dakota made a sharp gesture, and the crowd fell silent. An old woman pushed through the gathering, her face deeply lined but her eyes sharp as flint. She wore a dress decorated with hundreds of elk teeth, marking her as someone of importance. She circled Sarah's horse slowly, examining her like a piece of questionable trade goods. Then she spoke, her voice carrying across the village despite its thinness. Ohanzi translated quietly. This is Wikapi, grandmother of many, keeper of traditions. She says you are thin as winter grass, weak as newborn calf. She says you will not survive when the cold comes, and asks why Dakota brings burden to village when we must prepare for lean times. Before Sarah could respond, Dakota answered in English, clearly intending her to understand. I bring her because she wore chains. Because the trader who sold weapons to the Crow held her as slave. Because we do not leave those in bondage when we have power to free them, even if they have white skin. This is our way. This is what makes us different from those who would destroy us. Wikapi snorted but nodded slowly. She spoke again, and this time her tone was less hostile. Ohanzi translated, she says you may stay through winter. But you must work, must learn, must earn your place. No one carries those who will not carry themselves. If you prove useless, you leave when snow melts. If you prove worthy, perhaps you stay. Chief Mapia will speak with you when sun sets. The crowd dispersed gradually, though many continued to watch Sarah with suspicious eyes. A young woman approached, her pregnant belly prominent under her doeskin dress. She spoke to Dakota, who nodded and gestured to Sarah. The woman's expression was neutral but not unkind as she indicated Sarah should follow her. The young woman's name was Zitkala, and her teepee was smaller than most, set slightly apart from the others. Her English was limited, communicated mostly through gestures and simple words, but Sarah understood that she was a widow, that her husband had died in a battle with the Crow the previous spring, and that the baby would come before the first snow. Zitkala gave Sarah a worn but clean dress of soft doeskin, far warmer than the rag she had worn. She also provided moccasins lined with rabbit fur and showed Sarah how to tie them properly. The days that followed were the hardest Sarah had ever known, and that was saying something after 3 years with Thornton. She woke before dawn to help Zitkala with the endless work that sustained life in the village. They hauled water from the river, gathered firewood from the forest, scraped hides until Sarah's arms burned with exhaustion. The other women watched her constantly, waiting for her to fail, to complain, to prove she was the weak white woman they expected. Sarah gave them nothing. She worked until her hands bled and then kept working. She learned to build fires that didn't smoke, to tan hides until they were soft as cloth, to sew with sinew and bone needles. Zitkala proved to be a patient teacher, showing Sarah the tasks again and again until she could perform them adequately. In the evenings, Ohanzi would visit, teaching her words in Lakota, helping her understand the culture and customs that govern village life. Chief Mapia summoned her after she had been in the village for 2 weeks. He was an imposing man, perhaps 60 winters old, with gray streaking his long hair and a presence that commanded attention without effort. They met in his teepee, with Dakota and several elders present. Through Ohanzi, the chief questioned her for hours. Where did she come from? How had she been captured? What did she know of the white soldiers' plans? What were her intentions? Sarah answered honestly, holding nothing back. She told them about her family's wagon train, about the raiders who had killed her parents and sister, about being sold to Thornton. She told them about the collar, about 3 years of brutality and degradation. And she told them that she had nowhere else to go, that the world she had known was gone, and that she would work until her hands fell off if it meant she could stay somewhere she wouldn't wear chains. Mapia listened without expression, his dark eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke, and Ohanzi translated. Many of our people have suffered at the hands of whites. Villages burned. Children stolen and sent to schools that beat our language and customs from them. Sickness brought deliberately to kill us. Treaties broken before the ink dries. You say you have suffered, but you are white. How do we know you will not betray us to the soldiers? How do we know you are not spy? Sarah met his gaze steadily. You don't know. You can't know. All I can do is show you through my actions. I have nowhere to go, no people left to betray you to. This village is the first place in 3 years where someone has shown me kindness. If you send me away, I'll die. But I won't blame you for protecting your people. You have every reason not to trust me. Something flickered in Mapia's eyes. Respect, perhaps. He nodded slowly and spoke again. You may stay through winter. If you live, if you prove yourself, we will speak again when spring comes. Winter came to the valley like a white wolf, silent and merciless. The first snow fell in late November, transforming the village into a landscape of stark beauty. Smoke rose from every teepee, carrying the scents of cooking meat and burning cedar. The river froze at its edges, and the cold bit through even the thickest furs. Sarah had never experienced cold like this, but she had also never felt more alive. Zitkala's baby came during the first blizzard, a difficult birth that lasted through the night. Sarah held the young woman's hand, wiping her face with cool cloths while Wikapi and the other elder women worked with practiced efficiency. When the baby finally emerged, a boy with strong lungs and his father's dark eyes, Sarah felt tears streaming down her own face. It was the first time in years she had cried from joy rather than pain. The baby was named Lakota, after the war leader who had saved them both, in a way. The honor was not lost on the village, and Sarah noticed a subtle shift in how people treated her after that night. Women nodded to her as she passed. Children stopped running away when she approached. She was no longer quite so much an outsider. Lakota himself had been distant since bringing her to the village, respecting the space she needed to find her place among the people. But as winter deepened and the village drew together against the cold, Sarah found herself increasingly aware of him. She noticed how he ensured the elderly had enough food during the lean times, how he played with the children despite his serious demeanor, how the other warriors looked to him for leadership even though Mapia was chief. He was respected not because he demanded it but because he had earned it through countless actions, large and small. One evening, as Sarah returned from gathering wood, she found Lakota waiting outside Zitkala's teepee. Snow dusted his shoulders, and his breath formed clouds in the frigid air. "Walk with me," he said simply. They walked to the edge of the village, where the forest met the settlement. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. For a long time, neither spoke, and Sarah found she didn't mind the silence. It was comfortable, companionable in a way she hadn't experienced in years. "You have done well," Lakota said finally. "Better than many expected. Wikapi speaks of your strength. The women say you learn quickly. Even those who wanted you gone now say you have earned place here." Sarah smiled, hugging herself against the cold. "I had good teachers. And strong motivation. Death isn't much of an alternative." Lakota turned to face her, his expression serious. "Is that only reason? Fear of death? Or have you found something else here?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Sarah thought about how to answer, about what was true and what was safe to say. Finally, she chose honesty. At first, yes, it was just survival. But now? She paused, searching for words. "I found something I didn't expect to find again. Purpose. Community. A place where people see me as more than just property or burden. I found home, Lakota. For the first time since my family died, I feel like I'm home." Something shifted in Lakota's face, a softening around his eyes. "I hoped you would say this. Because I must tell you something." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "When I saw you in that cellar, wearing that collar, I felt something I have not felt since my wife died 5 winters ago. I felt anger, yes, at the cruelty of that man. But I also felt something else. Recognition, perhaps. As if I was meant to find you there, meant to bring you here." Sarah's heart began to beat faster. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I wish you to stay. Not just through winter, but always. I am saying that I would court you, if you would allow it. In our way, with proper respect for customs and traditions. I know you are still healing from your wounds, both those that show and those that do not. I know you may not feel the same. But I wanted you to know my intentions before spring comes, before Chief Mapia asks what is to be done with you." Sarah stared at him, overwhelmed by the revelation. In the months since he had freed her, Lakota had been kind but distant, respectful but not warm. She had not dared to hope that his feelings ran deeper, that his careful distance had been about propriety rather than indifference. I don't know what to say." "Say nothing now. Think on it. Learn more of our ways. Let winter pass, and when spring comes, you will know your heart." He smiled, a rare expression that transformed his usually stern face. "But know this. You are no longer alone. You have people here who care for you. You have home, as you said. Nothing will change that, whatever you decide about me." The winter deepened, but Sarah felt warmer than she had in years. She learned the language more quickly, picking up phrases and idioms until she could follow most conversations. She learned to bead and quill work, to make pemmican and dry meat, to tan hides until they were soft as butter. She learned the stories of the people, their history and legends, their griefs and triumphs. And slowly, carefully, she allowed herself to care for Lakota, to notice the way he moved through the world with quiet competence, to appreciate his wisdom and his gentle heart. When spring finally came, melting the snow and coaxing new growth from the earth, Chief Mapia called another council. Sarah stood before the elders with her head high, no longer the broken woman who had arrived half dead with fear. Mapia asked her the same question he had asked before: what were her intentions? Sarah answered in Lakota, her accent still heavy but her words clear. I wish to stay. This is my home now, these are my people. I will live by your customs, honor your traditions, contribute what I can to the village. I ask for nothing except the chance to prove, every day, that your trust in me is not misplaced. Mapia nodded slowly, and something that might have been a smile crossed his weathered face. Then stay. You are Lakota now, if you choose to be. We will give you a name in our language, to mark your place among us. You will no longer be Sarah, the white woman who came in chains. You will be Wania to waste, good winter, because you came to us when winter was near and proved yourself worthy through the cold times. The village celebrated that night with a feast. Lakota found Sarah as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. So, he said, you have decided to stay. This makes me glad. Now I ask again what I asked in winter. May I court you, Wania to waste? May I show you that you have found not just home, but love? Sarah looked at him, at this man who had saved her life and then given her the space to save herself. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the pain and loss and brutality. She thought about the collar around her neck and how Lakota had ordered it broken. She thought about what home meant, and love, and freedom. Yes, she said simply. Yes, you may. The story of the white woman who wore chains and found a home with the Lakota spread through many villages over the years that followed. But for Sarah, for Wania to waste, what mattered was not the story others told, but the life she built. A life of purpose and dignity, of love and belonging. A life where she was seen and valued and free. She had escaped chains and found something far more precious than mere survival. She had found herself.